Bertrand Russell had a sort of thought experiment he called the solipsism of the moment. And solipsism is the belief or the understanding that we are the universe and the universe is us. We are it. And the solipsism of the moment is not only that we are the universe and the universe is us, but our entire past doesn't necessarily exist. We have our memory of the past, which could be on a computer chip or just like a dream. And our future is yet to be lived or experienced. So all we know for sure is the moment that we're rolling through. And all that we could really be sure of is our own existence. Can't really prove or verify that anyone else exists, really, or that the world outside of us really exists, because all we can experience is ourselves and our perception of it. Bishop Berkeley, years before, founded the philosophical movement, if you will, of idealism, that we are because we perceive. And for good old Bishop Berkeley, God was the only entity that held it all together. So if there was such a thing as cause and effect, well, it was all in the mind of God who perceives the universe, and we are merely perceptions within God's perception. Now, that sounds like a lot of philosophical bullshit, but to me, what it really harkens emotionally is that we're selfish creatures. We can't really see beyond our own senses, and it's very, very difficult by extension to empathize with other human beings. We could try to relate to other folks' motivations and actions, and we always see their actions and their perceived motivations as related to us based on our goals with them. Relationships are very complicated. Lovers, business partners, even casual friendships are complex, often driven by power dynamics. And we can never really be sure as to the intent of another person, which makes us a little bit paranoid. And for the most part, most of the time, we're all sucked up into our own heads and hearts, obsessed with what we're doing and how we're feeling, and always trying to figure out our next move based on this limited amount of information, which is made all the more finite because of our self-absorption. Now, that all said, I would like to talk about how this confusion and this complexity relates to two things that I suddenly realized in an epiphany are actually expressions of the same thing. And therefore, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. I'll talk about both parts and then put a bow on it to see if you think that I'm onto something here and if you could relate. Welcome to another episode of No Hair, All Heart. And I'm your bald host, Mookie Spitz. And I'll really be diving into my own heart, talking about my parenting and my relationship with, at the time, my life partner and her role as, like it or not, welcome it or not, plan it or not, a stepmother to my kids. So let me start with the parenting aspect and then tie it into my relationship and see where we land. Now, as far as parenting goes, on the spectrum from a laissez-faire wee to helicopter parent or tiger parent or whatever kind of parent you'd like to ascribe a disciplinarian, with or without the ethnic or racial connotations, however good or bad that might be, I squarely fall into the laissez-faire, let it roll, easygoing, fun dad school of parenting. I want to keep my kids safe, and that's about it. I like things to be lighthearted and fun. Conflicts aren't so much to be avoided, but not dived into. If something's broke, express it, fix it, move on. To me, parenting isn't so much a process as simply setting up basic guardrails, ensuring the kids are safe, providing them the support they need every step of the way, being present as much as I can, but more or less letting it roll. They should do their own homework. They should find their own friends. They should make their own plans. And I need to take care of them financially. I need to emotionally be there for them. But it doesn't go too much further than that. And to me, a healthy child is a child who discovers the world and friendships for themselves through an organic, independent learning process. You let it roll. And when things do break, or if there's a crisis, then of course you dive in, you listen, you share, provide advice if that's what they want, that's what you think they need at that point. Make certain that they're not alone. Make certain that they always feel that you're there for them and that you love them. And once again, that's about it. If they have indulgences, things that might be annoying to you or that you think are even mildly destructive to them, well, you can only do so much to keep them extra safe or to create for them an idealized construct of what you think they could or should be doing for their own betterment. The opposite end of that spectrum is, as I'm mentioning, the helicopter or tiger or whatever mom and dad, where you plan every day, every evening of your child's existence. Whether they like it or not, you sign them up to soccer, to chess club, to the debate team. Whether they like it or not, you make them learn a musical instrument, learn a second language. Whether they like it or not, you program their existence so they don't sit back in idleness, so that they maximize their time, so that they can be all they can be. And since kids don't know any better, they need a parent to do this. They need structure, they need discipline, and they need almost constant supervision so they don't fall off the reservation and turn into a bum. Now, I paint this in extremes for the sake of just strategically outlining alternatives. And of course, there's a middle land between these two extremes, the 0 and the 1, hands off, hands on. But you get what I mean. And if you're a parent, and you've certainly been a child, then you could relate to your own life. You're a parent, and you, as a parent, if you are a parent, fall within this spectrum. And as I mentioned, I squarely fall on the hands off side of parenting. It's similar in my style with friends. It's similar in my style, for the most part, even in business, where I kind of let things slide for better or for worse, provide value, but I try not to steamroll, or I try not to be too much of a bore. I might come across that way in tone, But my attitude is let it roll, see what happens. And again, there's positive and negative aspects across a whole range of strengths and weaknesses within every context of this type of behavior. So, my kids, I have two sons, currently 18 and 22. Now, as they grew up, I was the fun dad for both of these kids. However, as I'll observe in a second, both kids were very, very different and are very, very different in attitude, in style, in behavior, in disposition. And that is also common. I think almost from a social Darwinian or survival perspective, if you've got these little bands of humans running around the savannas of Africa for hundreds of thousands of years in groups no bigger than what, 40, 50, 60 people, then families need to have a diverse set of behaviors in their offspring to make sure that all the duties get done. So I think human families and siblings tend to vary tremendously in behaviors and even in morphology to make sure that all the bases are covered for the tribe. And true to form, my kids, my younger one and older one, are quite opposite in many, many ways. One's tall, one's shorter, one has my body type, the other Korean woman, 90 pounds. I blogged about this and I podcasted about this in my Sexless Marriage podcast, which you might want to check out. Very funny and cynical, but also accurate. So their mom, 90-pound Korean woman, and I am a 220 plus pound bald white guy of European heritage. And my kids are hybrids, and they have almost random characteristics and traits from their mother and their father. And the dice got rolled for each, and they're both very, very different. And in terms of disposition and attitude and behavior, it's similarly divergent. The younger one, Fairly, is more like his dad, similarly creative and flex, inquisitive, and prefers not to have structure. And the older one is quite the opposite, but not apparently so, not in an obvious way. Loud and brash, like his father, actually. The older one seemed to not want any structure at all. But what became self-evident and what will be relevant for the latter part of this narrative here was his implicit need for structure, which I could not deliver. So fast forward to his college years, where the stressors that had progressively built up over time between my older son and his dad were reaching an acute level. He was in college. I was paying for college. He was going from college to college. And frankly, our relationship had deteriorated to him being rude as hell, disrespectful, and just unappreciative of his dear old dad. And I was reaching the point of acute frustration, which was not only was I paying for this guy's way, but he was shitting where he was eating. And I got over it. So I told him to go get loans, and if he wanted money, to ask for it, and I would Venmo him what he needed. And his free ride was cut off, the credit cards were cut off, and he would have to fend for himself, get a job, get a loan, get serious, get the hell out of the apartment. His reaction to this was to do none of the above and instead walked into a U.S. Marine recruiting station on campus and signed himself up. Now, the family was more or less shocked. I wasn't. I thought that, well, bravo. He took initiative, arguably for the first time for himself, and he went for it. And contrary to most of the family's opinion on the matter, he not only went into boot camp, but he graduated, and now he is a U.S. Marine. Quite a transformation. So, shortly before we flew out from California to attend his Marine graduation from boot camp at Paris Island, I put things into context and I wrote a father's thank you letter to the U.S. Marine Corps, in which this fun dad showed his gratitude to a tough drill sergeant. And I'd like to take a few minutes to read you the letter that I wrote within the context of this story of independence, self-actualization, and my own solipsism of the moment, as it were, in terms of stubbornly clinging to being that fun dad. And finally, as you'll see in a few minutes, accepting, perhaps for the first time, that such an angle of attack, that such an approach to parenting has its own implications. Dear U.S. Marine Corps and Kilo Company Platoon 3093 Commander, always loyal has been my personal motto as a father. From before the birth of my two sons and now into their burgeoning adulthood, I have vowed and succeeded at being the bedrock of their emotional and material security. Through thick and thin, good times and bad, I have prioritized their needs over my own and have become a better man for doing so. I was present at the moment of their birth, looked into their eyes the instant they opened them. My younger son, Nicholas, now 18 and living with me in California, entered the world smiling. My older son, Vincent, now 22 and about to enter the crucible at Paris Island, threw us a look that asked us, "Who are you people? And what the hell just happened?" My lifelong relationship with each son has matched our first experience at their birth, when I gazed into their raw souls and saw their essential, unchanging character. Nick became the calmer and collaborative younger brother, while Vince grew into the more impatient and impulsive older sibling. Each have had their growing pains, each living their own way. In retrospect, I should have paid closer attention to those early hints about their complementary personalities and adjusted my parenting style accordingly. Instead, I remained the quintessential fun dad throughout their childhoods and took a laissez-faire attitude regarding the creation of structure, enforcement of discipline, and insistence on goal setting. That approach worked well for my younger son, who needed room to find and express himself. Averse to formality, he hated school and instead has thrived in creative, open environments where he's discovered self-actualization in the form of exploration and experimentation. He's an ongoing and likely permanent work in progress and happy that way. My older son, in stark contrast, displayed a natural disposition to favor situations with clearly delineated boundaries and rules. Highly competitive, he has shined as a team leader within situations where the objectives are as crystal clear as the means to accomplish them. And he knows exactly what he needs to do and then goes about doing them well. The overall result of these two innately different kids growing up with the same parent is, in retrospect, obvious. Nick and I have had a wonderful relationship, while Vince and I have had a terrible one. Our divergent experiences reached their logical and inevitable culmination last year when Nick moved cross country with me and Vince joined the Marines. Prior to entering boot camp, honor, courage, and commitment were not at the top of my older son's to-do list. More like entitlement, arrogance, and defeat. Up all night playing video games, he attended 3 different colleges in 3 years and dropped out when his disrespectful behavior precluded me from paying his way, and he refused to get his own loans. He ostensibly decided to join the Marines as a way to pay for school, but I sensed deep down he knew what he needed, which was exactly what I didn't provide him as a parent. The deliberate development of physical, mental, and moral toughness wasn't on my fun dad agenda. Instead of pushing through surrender's pull, we ordered pizzas and hung out. Rather than pulling us together, our discernible lack of purpose made us fall apart. We didn't endure because we didn't have to prevail. We sullied our reputations and weren't deserving because we didn't have the right values to live by and fight with, leading to the wrong decisions at the wrong time. What worked with his younger brother failed with him. I failed him. The essence of personal accountability is taking responsibility for the role we play in how others treat us. Nowhere is that more true and meaningful than in parenting, where our children, like it or not, believe it or not, are a reflection of ourselves. The mirroring can be flattering or unflattering, affirming or debilitating, but the image is accurate even if reversed. For me, Fun Dad had given way to self-reflection. For Vincent, Obnoxious Son has over the past couple months been transformed through food rationing and sleep deprivation, day and nighttime marches, infiltration movements, combat resupply, casualty evacuation, and field firing combat scenarios, obstacles negotiations, leadership screening maneuvers. So far winning his imminent battles from within. My son, the recruit, has sent his family letters from boot camp as if written by a different person. His Kilo Company drill sergeant and the U.S. Marine Corps have clearly done what I could have and should have, but didn't do for him. Vincent, for the first time, displaying the characteristics of a thriving, self-actualized adult. His younger brother and I look forward to attending his Marine graduation next month and want to sincerely thank the Corps and his platoon commander for instilling in him your code. My son seems on his way to telling the truth, treating others with dignity and respect, fulfilling his commitments, being ethical, and acting responsibly. Who knew? Semper Fi. Now, I published that on the blog platform Medium. I'll leave a link in the description below if you want to check it out. And writing it was quite a catharsis because in witnessing Vinny's transformation, I was forced to transform my attitude regarding my parenting. I was convinced in the solipsism of my many moments that what I was doing came naturally, was of course the right way to go about doing things, and any deviation from that standard, as evinced by behavior of my son, and as I'll discuss in a second, my life partner at the time, wasn't on my shoulders, but was on an unappreciative and entitled and difficult and bratty and asshole acting son. And my life partner, who just couldn't let up on what she considered my duty, my responsibilities, my attitude, and my behaviors as a parent. But when I witnessed this transformation, which was reinforced subsequently, weeks after I wrote this, when we actually flew to South Carolina and saw Vincent in formation, in uniform, saluting officers, standing at attention, going on runs, his body fit, his mind clear, I came to the obvious realization that this kid needed this probably all along. That his recklessness, his arrogance, his lack of discipline were all a consequence of, drum roll please, my lack of discipline. Now, counterfactuals are tempting to do, and we do them all the time, the perennial what if. What if I had brought the hammer down on Vincent? What if I had been more of a drill sergeant and less of a fun dad? What if I would have, as we'll see in a second, listened to what my life partner was insisting I do and say and act toward my own kid? Now, that's impossible to really speculate about, at least in terms of outcome. You can speculate all you want, but who knows how things would have shaken out. If you believe in the multiverse, then it's played out an infinite number of times, an infinite variation, and we just happen to be in the one where, well, I just opted for fun dad. We had this breakdown. Vince, luckily, almost coincidentally, ended up in the Marines as a result of his reaction to my reaction to his reaction. And surprise, surprise, the biggest blessing that the family has experienced in a long time is for Vinny to actually make it through boot camp, get his ass kicked, and develop the vital life skills that I couldn't or wouldn't teach him. So it's hard to say if I would have started earlier had the results been equally favorable. Maybe he would have rebelled. Maybe he would have run away from home. Maybe he would have turned into a delinquent just to piss me off. He was, despite his entitlement and his late night video gaming, not too bad a kid in the grander scheme of things, which, by the way, was my rationalization for not changing my parenting style at all. I pretty much picked up this attitude that if the kid isn't stealing cars and burning the house down, that, well, he's a brat and a pain in the ass, but, at least he's not a juvenile delinquent. A very, very, very low bar to set, but one that you would expect from a fun dad. Anyway, here we are, and he is now in training at Camp Lejeune. They're going to station him. He might even be sent to Pendleton, not far from where me and Nick are living right now in California. He could very well be stationed across the world, maybe even in Korea, near where his mom ended up going back to. Who knows? The outcome, though, so far, and I don't want to jinx it because it's been so favorable, is that he seems to be thriving. He has found a path. No path is perfect, but it's a career path, it's an identity. He has purpose, and he is doing well. And our relationship has at least improved to the point where if I send him a text, he responds, and it's cordial. And we're all looking forward to him mastering his specialty, being stationed somewhere, and becoming a U.S. Marine. Godspeed. And we all hope, of course, that he avoids any kind of personal endangerment to his being while learning as much as he can, serving his country and mostly himself with an environment that is controlled, disciplined, and fitting his character. That's the real outcome of this entire exercise. He's found his tribe, at least for the time being, despite and maybe in spite and to spite his fun dad. Bravo. As a parent, all I want him to be is happy and self actualized and safe. And I hope all three will come to bear throughout his experiences in the U.S. Marines. Now, here's where I transition to the other part of this epiphany I had, where I moved in with my life partner into a brownstone in Brooklyn. And we did the entire blended family move. She had two boys. I had two boys, fulfilling basically milestones along a range of ages from the youngest to the oldest of about 6 years, pretty much evenly distributed. And what seemed to be, in principle and on paper, an idealized Brady Bunch style evolution rapidly disintegrated into a hellish circumstance where the focus of the discord and the match that got thrown onto the kerosene of an already fairly volatile relationship was this parenting issue. It won't take much to guess that her parenting style was closer to the helicopter mom than to my fun dad. And I had made promises moving into this situation based on the obvious behaviors, parenting behaviors that we had each respectively displayed to each other, that I would, air quote, step up, that I would take on more of an active role as she saw I should in my children's development. And by that, she meant, and I knew that she meant, that I would be more of a planner, more of a disciplinarian, more of a drill sergeant like kind of dad than the, oh, whatever, let's order a pizza and watch a movie kind of dad. Needless to say, and even in that moment, I acknowledged that promises made, promises not kept. It just seemed counterintuitive and unnatural and a pain in the ass for me to flip my style when everything ostensibly seemed to be fine. Yes, the kids played too many video games, but they seemed to be all right. Everyone seemed to be happy in this household except my life partner, who was upset and couldn't tolerate that I was ostensibly fucking up the lives of my own children. To that, I took offense that, well, maybe I'm not the disciplinarian that I promised, admittedly, but we're all rolling with it. I'm doing my best, and everyone here is happy except you. And I jumped to the erroneous conclusion that since everyone was happy in this arrangement except her, that the burden of her unhappiness had to squarely fall on her shoulders. This goes back to the Russell observation of the solipsism of the moment, where I had limited data that I was paying attention to. The data was all there. The problem was I wasn't paying attention to it. And the problem wasn't even so much that I wasn't paying attention to my life partner, which is a big problem, but I wasn't paying attention to my own older son. What I didn't pick up, and what my life partner was absolutely correct about, was this retroactively proven reality that despite his entitled behavior, his brattiness, his impatience, and his impulsiveness, maybe if I would have paid attention as a direct consequence of these very behaviors, he needed to be told what to do. He needed structure. He needed direction. And he needed the support, the emotional support that that kind of conflict would have engendered in him. Regardless of the counterfactual, what if I would have brought more of the hammer down? In retrospect, I clearly should have brought more of the hammer down, as evinced by his success in Paris Island boot camp. In contrast, my younger son would have lasted maybe 5 minutes in boot camp. Once again, I'm stating the obvious that the two boys are very different. And the equally obvious fail on my part that I acted the same with both of them. Maybe there's its own organic inevitability, especially if you're a direct kind of easygoing and honest guy like I am. It's hard for me to cater my behaviors to specific people. And if you've known me for a while, colleagues, friends, family, it becomes quite evident also that I'm myself, regardless of context and consequence. So I will use bad language. I will speak off the cuff. I am loud. I am irreverent, for better and for worse. People almost always know exactly what's on my mind. I express my opinions clearly, if with a bit too much volume and intensity, and not always at the most appropriate moment. But what you see is what you get with me. And I took that attitude with both of my boys. This is who I am. I am the fun dad, for better or for worse. And here we go, we. As in, we. Now, that roller coaster might have proved thrilling to some, but for my life partner, it was not fun at all. And here I own up also to taking accountability and responsibility, not only for not listening and applying some of the wisdom of a mom vis-a-vis a child, specifically regarding my older son who needed more discipline, as proven by the discipline in boot camp changing his life. But I was also insensitive to the feelings and actions and behaviors of my life partner. So while I was upset and complaining that I got no slack and no appreciation for being present, being fun, being an air quote good dad, fun dad, she felt that I was not respecting her attitude regarding my failings thereof. She was a mom. She knew better. She had read the situation well, and I was not responding. And by not responding, I was ignoring and disrespecting not only her opinion, but her experience, her self identification as a mother. And ouch, did that hurt for her? And ouch for me not to acknowledge it. So she threw back and threw down. She was mad. She was upset. She was disappointed. And she let me know it. And she let me have it. That, I think, in all fairness, is an objective view of the breakdown in our relationship. So, as I mentioned, what was ostensibly designed to be the dream middle class, upper middle class, New York boroughs, Brady Bunch, move in, second marriage, blended family type of heavenly evolution became a raging hell. Now, the kids were mostly left out of this, but my life partner and I were miserable. And this was the apex of, or the fulcrum of, our discord, which was I made promises that I didn't keep as a parent. And I felt big fucking deal. Let's just order a pizza and get amorous and have a good time and celebrate ourselves and our life and just not worry about this. It's too much of a hassle. To which her natural response was, what do you mean, not worry about it? The essence of my identity is being a good mother, and frankly, I think you're being a shitty father. Ouch, 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 ouch. She had an aunt who has since passed away from cancer, who was one of the greatest humans on the planet. And one of the aspects of her character that made her so awesome was her directness and frankness. And at one point in the middle of this maelstrom, I looked at her and she looked at me and she said, I feel for you guys. And I'm like, we're both trying. And she said, I'm not so sure you're going to make it. The rest of the family just ignored this train wreck, hoped for the best, knew that me and my life partner had a kinetic, incendiary, but also very intense relationship. So they just figured this was par for the course. But her aunt sensed that this was no bueno. And sure enough, after a couple years, I pulled the plug. I'm the one who bailed on this situation because my life partner felt that it was fixable, that we should keep working on it. That, just like parenting, it wasn't a static state of fun times interspersed with a few conflicts, but for the most part, movies and pizza and relaxing and having fun. Her view of family and responsibility and accountability was working on it, making plans and fulfilling them, being self actualized, responsible adults, training our children to do the same. And I'm a Toys R Us kid. I never want to grow up. And our paths, our respective paths since breaking up, reflect our strengths and, frankly, some of our weaknesses, admittedly, some of my weaknesses that I can focus on, where I am indulging in all my fancies, creating tons of content, writing, blogging, video ranting, podcasting. I'm the fun dad who's doing fun content, eating up every hour I can, much to the sacrifice of arguably my other adult responsibilities. And she, conversely, is thriving in her own way with her own successful business, keeping things stable, being actively engaged not only in her own life and the life of her kids, but the life of her many, many, many friends, extended family. And I'm sitting here ranting into my phone, throwing up another podcast, ranting in my kitchen on TikTok, and about to publish my second book. So, who is at fault? Who is right and who is wrong? Well, in retrospect, we were both enduring the fog of war and peace. The fog of war was our conflict. We were roiling in our own stubbornness. And it was also the fog of peace in the sense that it was hard for us to see the good stuff that was there. At least it was hard for me to see the good stuff. And now, with years gone by, we split just before the pandemic started raging, as if the pandemic was a global clearing out. Our relationship cleared out our own souls. And maybe with that, we discovered our own excesses. And now, happily, I believe we're good friends. We can communicate, we could share gossip, we can give each other advice, we can support each other. And our respective kids are in each other's lives. And of course, she goes out of her way to be a part of my kids' lives much more than I'm a part of her kids' lives, not for want of feeling affection or caring, but she's the doer. She's going to make it happen. And I'm too busy ordering pizzas and having fun. And my business, my working business suffers. Hers continues to flourish. And she's more actively engaged with her friends and her extended family and arguably her own children. But we each have our own equilibrium and we each have our own way of finding our own happiness. And if there's a takeaway from all of this, it's that we can't be that which we are not. But at the very least, we can listen better. And at the very least, understand that the solipsism of the moment, this conclusion that we are the universe and the universe is us, that there's no past and there's no future and there's only this moment, might be logically consistent, but it's just untenable. Bertrand Russell himself dismissed that as a viable possibility, is because it made life itself meaningless. You can imagine the entire universe being created and destroyed second to second, and with it all of our memories, and we wouldn't know any different. But what kind of universe and what kind of life is that? And Bishop Berkeley might dismiss all of objective reality as just a mirror of the mind, and all of these collective mirrored minds mirroring in the mirrored mind of God. But what's the point of that, too? Trees falling in forests where no one can hear them, the dark side of the moon existing independent of our perception of it. Clearly, there's an objective reality, even if it's emergent. And clearly, our lives can't be led with a stubborn clinging to our own point of view. And clearly, we aren't always right about everything, no matter how much we feel that we are. And clearly, the opportunity abounds for getting over ourselves, taking personal responsibility onto our own shoulders, and maturing and growing up and letting things go to the point where you can understand other people's points of view about you. And in that acceptance and acknowledgement, make your own life more meaningful and better by seeing more of yourself. All of a sudden, your own world gets bigger. So even if it's a solipsism of the moment, at least the universe that you are and you are the universe is bigger and more complicated than you ever thought it was. And with that understanding, you've got more of a life than you had before, And perhaps most importantly, you can make the lives, the universes of those people around you that much better by acknowledging one's own shit, fessing up to it, and hopefully tweaking your own behaviors in a way that it's better for you, it's better for everyone, and you can keep moving and keep learning and keep enjoying things with the enthusiasm of someone who has not learned it all and knows it all. That boring stasis of smug comfort, but the anxiety inherent in uncertainty and learning and growing. So thanks for listening to the No Hair All Heart podcast. I'm Mookie Spitz. I keep learning and trying to grow. And I thought I'd relate this story to you, this two-pronged tale of my older son becoming a Marine to find himself in the structure that I couldn't give him, and my own epiphany regarding my own entitlement, my own bratty behavior, my own selfishness, putting the burden on my own shoulders of my own behavior, and by doing so, freeing myself of any and all resentment, embracing the love that was there all along, and lavishing myself with the blessing of having two healthy, self-actualized boys on the brink of adulthood, and a very, very challenging relationship that now isn't seen as a failure, but seen as really a milestone in both of our emotional and personal and even spiritual development. Like, comment, share, and you can even click on the link to send me a note. Let me know what you think, and I'll be happy to respond.